This is 1980 6-volt electrics XL500s. Partway through restoration, basically just replacing wearable brake pads, bearings, shocks, oil seals. I haven't touched the engine yet, but everything else I've replaced, head bearings, from start to back. I'm not really looking to make the bike concourse. I actually prefer the original old patina on it. It's had a hard life and deserves to show it. When I bought the bike, there was no indicators on it, and I'm in the UK, and I do prefer indicators, to be honest. The old hand signals just don't wash it with me anymore. Wiring loom for the bike seems to have all the correct wires in it, but whether the bike was originally supplied without indicators, I'm not sure. I don't know, but there was none supplied with it. So I thought I'd do a retrofit of putting the indicators on. The control gear on the bike is all in place. On the handlebars, all the control gear is in the correct place. We've got high and lower there, we've got indicators here, left and right, horn, and on this side we've got the lights on and off and the engine run stop. So everything's in place. We're missing the winker relay, as they call it. If you need help with the wiring loom, they're in the Haynes manual. There is the UK, USA and the XR model wiring diagrams. I've got the original manual, service manual, which I managed to pick up, and I prefer to use this one, although the conventions are slightly older in it. I actually like the fact that it shows switches rather than this sort of like this sort of format. I'm not fond of that. I prefer to actually see the switches. Just old fashioned, that's all it is. But the Japanese back in the 80s had some strange ideas about wiring, and from the battery the rather than using black, they used green, and this green travels through to the indicators as the earth reference or chassis reference. There's a grounding point there for it, and then we travel through for the rest of the loom and the wiring and that too, but again to the front and the left and right indicators. The wiring on this bike being 6-volt is a little bit strange in that when you turn on the ignition, you'll get the rear tail light, the brake lights, the horn, the winker relay all operate, but the headlamp, main headlamp, is run off its own winding in this alternator. So there seems to be a winding for just purely for the front headlamp and light, the low beam. The second winding is for the ignition, and the third winding is for charging the battery and running the bike generally, I suppose, on a 6-volt system. But the main headlamp's going to be AC, so I'm leaving it all these. A lot of people have said convert to 12 volts, but I can't be bothered with that, to be honest. But going back to the convention of their wiring, so they tend to use green for earth. Don't mix up the black. There is a black wire on here that feeds most of these items, and it's alive, and that comes from this ignition switch down here. So you've got the from the battery, you've got a wire running in through the ignition switch and back out, and it seems to be a black, which seems to power up the winker relay and a few other bits and bobs. So try not to get too confused with that. Don't take black as bead zero reference, basically. The other thing they do, they use an orange wire for your left indicator and a light blue for the right indicator. Then there's a common inside here, this switch here, which is from the main handlebar switch to switch either left or right indicator on and off. Now this is where I had a little bit of issue. I couldn't find these wires, but the circuit diagram is quite simple to follow, to be honest. If you use the Haynes manual, it's even colour coded for you, so you can actually see all the colours coming in and going out. Very simple to use. But going back to the bike, okay, to gain access to the wires, obviously we've got to remove the headlamp. I've taken the tank off, the seat off, because I'm doing other work on the bike. But what I couldn't actually find originally, the wires are I need, but I've actually found them, and this is the light blue wire, and that goes off then to one of the indicators. These aren't actually wired incorrectly here, they're just loosely fitted. The orange wire is over here, which again goes off to one of the indicators, and the neutral for it goes into this double green socket for both sides of the indicators. And that's the same at the rear as well. You'll find exactly the same sort of layout at the back: orange, light blue, and a green wire for connecting the 0 volt reference or earth chassis reference. Now what we needed to find was the wire that came from the main indicator control switch, which is the common. Now this actually comes in onto this loom here and is then fed out on this grey wire. It's then fed out onto this wire, which I couldn't actually find this, it'd been taped up. But this is the wire that goes down to the winker relay. So effectively that bullet needs just pushing into that point there, and then we need to trace this wire down to the actual relay. Now the problem I had with that, I'll just show you that. This is your main loom from the headlight, and inside there should be the grey wire. Now the winker relay is located on the opposite side of the bike at the end of all the connections. Now this bike hadn't got one fitted at all. I found it a bit strange, I couldn't find the wires. I'm looking for a green, a grey and a black wire, which should be sort of be floating. I couldn't find them anywhere. So I ended up having to strip back some of this loom insulation, and lo and behold, I came across the wires. And there they are there. I've temporarily just fitted them to this winker relay. I've just twisted the wire around them, it's not particularly nice, but this is your grey, this is your black, which is a positive. This goes back to the common on the handlebar indicators, and the green wire, which is fitted on most of your USA models, I believe, they've just tied to earth at this point here. So this is the actual relay. I'll call it a relay, I don't like saying winker, it sounds weird. A DC flasher, if you like, sounds a lot better. It's 6 volt, 2 pin, and the grey goes onto the L and the black goes onto the B, being live. If you get it the wrong way around, I think generally your indicators will just stick on permanently and not flash. But yeah, it's quite simple to find, so all I've got to do now is retrofit. I've got to extend these wires out and fit this just on the opposite side of the bike. But it all seems to work now. Now I've located and found those wires. The green wire can stay bonded to earth because it's not used on this European model. What I'll do now is we'll power it up and I'll just show you it all working. Right, we've got all the wiring done. Still needs all tidying up. If we switch the ignition on. That bulb that's come on is the neutral light. If I switch on now the indicator for the left, we're going to have that flashing, both front and rear. And we'll just do the right, both front and rear, so that's fine. Turn that off. If we turn on the lighting, these are the speedo lights to light up the internal, and the rear tail lights on as well. And we should also have brake lights. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. Let's move around. So we've got the brake lights at the rear as well, so that's all working. So everything seems to be working fine now. Turn it back off. And just to reiterate, you're looking for this light blue wire, orange wire and the grey wire. And then if you obviously need to wire up the flasher, winker, whatever you want to call it. Well, I hope that sort of helps if anybody's doing this job. The secret to this job really is to get the wiring diagram. There are quite a few copies online, so it is very easy to get. Fortunately, I've got the Haynes manual and the original service manual, so it's quite easy to trace the wires through.